Fourth be with you, 2020. So, Anakin, buddy, make sure next time to get the high ground. Very, very important indeed. So, I'm going to tell you guys a couple good Star Wars stories today. We're going to be hanging out. I looked at the calendar. Just turned out that the J. Wilkes 2019 Rosé of Grenache just got released at a quality control hold today, even though it's not labeled yet. So I actually scored us a bottle of unlabeled, sort of cellar labeled 2019 Rosé of Grenache. So really looking forward to sharing that with you. I tasted it and took some tasting notes earlier in the day. And I'm looking forward. Actually, I just decided it's a nice warm day here on the Central Coast, about 72 degrees with a nice breeze outside. Had a couple walks today, and now I am just ready to kind of get down and have some rosé. So, welcome to Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. This is, believe it or not, the fifth week of Day Drinking with Wes Hagen, and we have not missed a day yet. So that's a good sign, right? We're healthy, we're watching, we're listening, we're having fun. So that is all well and good. So I'm hoping you guys are going to enjoy the show today. We're going to talk a little bit about rosé. We're going to talk about the production of rosé. And although we're taking a little bit of a push away from Pinot Noir, we will be doing that Pinot Noir show next Monday. A couple of exciting things coming up to discuss with you as well. And that is, we are going to be live this Friday with Jason Osborne, who is a consulting brewmaster for Captain Fatty's down in Goleta, California, one of my favorite breweries. So this Friday, it is a beer takeover. We are basically all taking care of beer, and that will be rather amazing and fun. Really, really looking forward to that. So we've got rosé today. Let me take a quick look at what we got coming up. Tomorrow we're doing Chardonnay. And we're doing the J. Wilkes we're doing J. Wilkes versus Barrel Burner versus Ballard Lane. So we're tasting 3 Chardonnays tomorrow to discuss how they're different. And Colleen, welcome. So we've got today, we're talking a little bit about rosé. And then tomorrow, Cinco de Mayo, we'll talk about a little bit about Chardonnays. We may bring up Mexican lager and a little bit about the history of Cinco de Mayo. Not much, because it's basically celebrates a battle that most Mexican people don't even remember, kind of a non-consequential victory versus the French army. But we'll talk about that, what that means. But today, it's going to be rosé. I am going to offer a shot to all you fine folk. So glad you guys could make us. John is in the house. Welcome, my friend. So glad you're here. I'm having a little tequila to celebrate May the 4th. Here we go. Always guarantees a better show. Boom. Here we go. Mark, good to see you, bud. Glad you guys all here. We're doing some rosé. I hope if you have the opportunity, if you haven't, I definitely recommend you go check it out. I thought it was a great show on Friday with Vince Anter from V is for Vino. And if you don't know Vince and V is for Vino, he makes the show. And thank you. And V is for Vino is the #1 rated wine show on all of Amazon Prime. So we had a great time on Friday chatting from about 5 o'clock to about 6 o'clock. Had a great conversation about sort of the history of certain aspects of the wine industry and things about wine that I didn't think you guys knew. You probably did know a few of them because you hang out with me, and I tend to get a little esoteric about this whole wine history thing. So really looking forward to it. And as you guys come in, you guys should know there's a little bit of an audible today on the program. We are moving away from Chardonnay and moving straight to rosé, and I'll tell you why. Thank you. I'm glad. Generally, my wife has a rule that I don't wear branded T-shirts online unless it says J. Wilkes. A lot of my branded T-shirts end up either in – so a winemaker generally has 2 sides of their closet, especially if they're married. They have clothes that you either wear to sort of go play outside, maybe go play basketball or football with your friends, kind of the dirty pile. And it's also the pile that goes into winery wear. So when you go into the winery, as you might imagine, you probably don't want to go wearing – what you normally see winemakers wearing in commercials, which is, the perfect like white J. Crew shirt, collared, pulling a little bit of Pinot Noir with a thief out of a barrel. So careful, we have, I guess those winemakers have people that keep them from getting dirty. Myself, I can get dirty in a clean room. You can put me in Caltech in the middle of, who was the guy who invented the clean room? Same guy who invented or discovered the actual age of the earth. And he also discovered and got lead out of gasoline. Claire Patterson. I can't believe I remember that. One main reason why I remember Claire Patterson, who's one of my great heroes as a scientist, he lived in Pasadena almost his whole life. And his wife was actually my AP chemistry teacher at La Cañada High School in 1985 and 1986. So Mrs. Patterson, I had no idea. You think a science teacher might remind her AP students that her husband was one of the most important scientists of the 20th century, but that's just how cool the Pattersons were. They really didn't bring it up, although they did probably save millions and millions of lives getting that lead out of gasoline. And turns out he was trying his best to find out where all this environmental lead was from. And to try as he might, he could not find a space anywhere in California, anywhere in Pasadena, but more importantly, anywhere at Caltech where he could do a test on anything that would not come up positive for lead. So as a result, Claire Patterson ended up inventing and making the first clean room. And as he was scrubbing this clean room, people kept coming in. They just didn't understand. Finally, he was looking at some ice core samples from pre-industrial Antarctica, I believe, and found water that had no lead in it. And as he went through the core samples, what he discovered is the more lead gasoline we were burning, the more lead we were putting into our environment. Turns out lead is a pretty intense sort of neurotoxin, especially for people that are young. And as a result, getting the lead out of our gasoline probably, maybe it caused a couple knocks in our engines. I've never heard it, but the lead industry always said that lead was absolutely important for keeping in gasoline. Turns out not only is it not, but they were all basically using a very cheap additive to, with probably full knowledge, harm human beings quite a bit. So, Nita's in the house and Linda's here. We got Ruth, Michelle Shin. Thank you so much again for the book. I just was looking through it again, and I'm going to inscribe it with your name so I always remember. And then Dominic's in the house and Christy's here. I'm glad the fourth the fourth being with us did not escape you guys. That is awesome. Right as we start today, I'm going to tell you probably one of my favorite stories about when I was 8 years old and actually saw Star Wars for the first time. So in 6 minutes, I will start the Instagram camera and we will get going, because you are my Facebook people. You were here first, and you get me for an extra 15 minutes at the beginning of all this stuff. So I'm going to have a sip of water, take a deep breath. Feeling good. So week five of day drinking with Wes Hagen. My liver's alive. I'm still married. My wife and I are heavily involved in a new workout routine where we're basically doing full body weight, free weight lifts 3 times a week, sometimes 4. This is something I'm not used to. Physical discipline is not necessarily my forte, but as we move forward, I'm very excited. Oh, how's that? Jim Eshelman opened the 2018 J. Wilkes Viognier. Is that for tonight, or are you just starting to drink that, Jim? And then I've got Josh is asking about. So I'd love to know about Jim and Marion enjoying that beautiful 18 J. Wilkes Viognier, Paso Robles Highlands District, 100% Viognier, 100% French Camp Vineyard. And Tommy's in the house. I actually cleared out some of my friends on my Facebook page, Tommy, so I could accept your friend request today. So thanks for reaching out. Appreciate that. Nice. Drink zero. Test the new Repour. I actually have been testing the Repours on a lot of different wines. I've actually even got it already in my in the rosé that we're tasting today. And believe it or not, Michelle, that bottle of dessert wine is still just fine under Repour. And I was pretty surprised. Okay, question from Josh Niermeyer. And if you don't know Josh, he is a first responder. And he is not only a wine geek, a beer geek, basically a wine guide down to the Guadalupe Valley of Baja, Mexico. But he also is a San Diego sheriff. So San Diego County Sheriff. So thank you for that. And his question was, if there's a scent of wet cigarette ash or wet wood ash in wine, is that a flaw or just misuse of oak? I would say it's probably, that is classic smoke damage. That is classic fire smoke damage. So my guess is you might be looking at a 2018. My guess is, tell me the vintage and the AVA, and I bet if you look it up, there was a fire. That wet ash character, I've only had an alcohol without smoke damage in a very popular but pretty disgusting beer that they drink in the south of Spain called Cruz Campo. Cruz Campo basically tastes like the ash of a Dorado cigarette. And a Dorado is the special cigarette that they smoke in Spain made of black tobacco. And I don't know how much they still smoke in Spain, but back when I used to go there in the 80s and early 90s, basically everyone smoked in Spain. And American cigarettes were like Cuban cigars. If you had American cigarettes, there's a thing that happens. It's sort of like in Liberia, you can't eat in public because if you eat in public, you're expected to share with everyone seeing you eat. So no one eats in public. In Spain, you got to be really careful about smoking because when I was there, you could smoke anywhere. And as a result, if you had American cigarettes were back then, it was exactly $1 a pack. You could get them duty free leaving LAX for $10 a carton for Camel Lights. Get them over to Spain if you wanted to buy real American cigarettes, $10 to $12 a pack. And they were basically so crunchy that they didn't even taste good. So I had a pack of extremely fresh, extremely beautiful, or a carton. I might have actually brought 2 cartons for a month. And those 2 cartons were gone in 4 days. Not because I was smoking 5 packs of cigarettes a day, but because every time I was at a bar in Madrid and I took out a cigarette to smoke, basically you have to ask everyone at the table if they'd like a cigarette. And generally all the people I were hanging out with were smokers, and all the people would not break out their own cigarettes. They all waited for me to smoke so they could all get an American cigarette. To them was a special treat. I didn't have a problem with it. I ended up smoking Fortuna 100s for the rest of the trip because that's the closest thing that they make to like a Marlboro Light style. Fortunately, I'm not a smoker anymore. My lungs are doing pretty well, although let's just say I'm going to try to keep myself virus-free as long as I possibly can. Definitely have a few underlying conditions that I would like to stay healthy. Cool. It is 4:59, which means we are poised, ready, tanned, rested, and ready. We are about to get the higher ground to make sure that that a Jedi doesn't kill us. I've already had a beautiful shot of well, I guess it was tequila to start off. So I'm feeling good. I've been day drinking. I hope you're day drinking. And here we go. Of course, exactly at 5 o'clock. My other, whoops. There we go. And we are live. All right. Here we go. We're reconnecting, and we are live on Instagram. So we are live on Instagram. We are live on J. Wilkes Wines Santa Barbara, and we are live at Wes Hagen. So welcome, Dawn. Welcome, Michelle. Welcome, Josh. There was a fire. Josh, we were just talking about smoke taint in wine. From about 4:45 to 5 o'clock, I come on Facebook Live, and we kind of shoot the breeze, and I want to make sure what's going on. I want to welcome everybody on Instagram as well. May the 4th be with you, 2020. And we're doing everything we can to make sure we have the higher ground for the entire time we're drinking, so that Obi-Wan doesn't have the obvious ease of killing us and saying that we have no chance because we have the lower ground. So we have the higher ground. So that means we are drinking, we are day drinking, we are having fun. We got Dead Linus in the house. We got Repour Wine Saver. Hey, we got Repour here. It's probably Tom, the inventor. Tom is a PhD, and as I mentioned to you guys a number of times before, we like to talk about Repour on this program. So the Repour technology, as you see here, and you can drop it, it doesn't break. Unlike, I have actually dropped a Coravin and it did break, and that was a $300 problem, my problem. But if you drop this off of a tall building and it explodes, chances are, $1.75, $2, you're back in order. So this basically, you peel the little silver sort of protector over this, and then that goes in 1 bottle of wine, and that 1 bottle of wine will be good for weeks. So just in case you want to open, if you saw my kitchen counter right now, there's about 14 bottles of wine from the last 2 weeks of me tasting. I went through all those bottles yesterday and found that every single one that was finished with a repour, including a already slightly oxidized dessert wine from Maryland, Gruner Veltliner, is still perfectly sound. So 2 weeks, 14 wines, I'm still drinking all of them. So I can bring any of them back. I can taste any of them for tasting notes. So this is a really cool technology, especially if you like to open a lot of different wines. And I was pretty surprised. Even the 2014 Cabernet, which was showing some secondary and tertiary characteristics, was really beautiful under the repour. So you can always go to my Facebook page, just the Wes Hagen Facebook page, go down a little bit, and there's a link that you guys can use, and I'll put a new one up to get 10% off your orders of repours. The more you buy, the less expensive they are. They start about less than $3, $2.50, and they go down to about $2 if you buy a box of them. And they're great gifts. And you don't have to spend $300 for a Coravin. So that's kind of fun. You're very welcome. Happy to do that for you. So it looks like we got Andrews in the house, and we got it's hard for me to pronounce all the names on Instagram because the fact that there's real names, and I don't know if you want me to call you R. Covine, but it's good to see you. I'm glad everybody's here. Chris Sawyer's in the house. Now we got some Psalms in the house, so I have to be a little bit careful about what I say about wine. No, I'm just kidding. I'll say anything the hell I want about wine. Tonight, if you don't know the rules here at Day Drinking with Wes Hagen, there are no rules. I don't use notes. I generally go without a net. I usually go without a spit bucket. I love to drink with you. It's a fantastic, the name of it is Repour, and it's available at repour.com. Now that we're launching in, I'm going to take a little time not welcoming everybody and not answering questions. But if you want to tell me what you're drinking, where you are, and if you have any questions, I will go over that. And after we taste the rosé, we'll take a little pause, and then I'll talk to you guys a little bit about the production of rosé. What grapes make the best rosé? I would love your opinion on this too. What varieties do you love to drink in rosé? Do you think Grenache rosé, Syrah rosé, Mourvedre rosé, Pinot Noir rosé, Nebbiolo rosé, Sangiovese rosé, or Rosato? So every country has a word for rosé, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can take grapes that are traditionally used for making red wine and make this beautiful pink stuff. And that the oldest wine ever made was likely a Paleolithic rosé. So we'll talk a little bit about the history of wine by virtue of, is it possible that the first wines human beings ever made and drank on purpose? They certainly ate a couple fermented grapes off the vine and probably got a tiny little buzz. But as far as taking grapes, pressing the juice, and making a wine, I'm going to say rosé is probably the first wine that humankind ever drank. So we've got this beautiful color. So this is almost 100% Grenache. So yes, the Miller Family Wine Company is completely obsessed with Grenache rosé. Very similar color and fairly similar flavor profile. I would consider the Smashberry to be sort of the rosé that we make for sort of session everyday drinking. The J. Wilkes rosé might have a little more, could have a little more age worthiness to it. Who's aging rosé? I am. I love rosé with 3 or 4 years on it. I'm fascinated what happens with rosé because the primary fruit in rosé tends to hang out a lot longer than it does in a white wine, sometimes even longer than a red wine. And if you've ever had a Chateau Moussard, I believe that's from Lebanon, Chateau Moussard rosé, a little bit oxidized, Bartholomew, Bartholomew Broadbent reps those wines too, and they're absolutely delicious. If you've ever had a Tavel rosé, there's some incredible Tavel rosé that can go 3, 4, 5 years. So rosé doesn't have to be drunk extremely fresh and clean and bright. It can also go a couple years in the cellar if that's what you like. But generally, rosé is vin de plaisir, right? We talked a little bit about what the French consider. There's 2 kinds of wine in France, right? Vin de plaisir and vin du goutte. And vin de plaisir is just pleasure wine. You buy it in a jug, you buy it in a bottle, you buy it in however you want to buy it, and you drink it. It's just delicious. Day drinking. So lovely to be alive on a planet, spending 70,000 miles through space. And if you think about us being on one of the wings of sort of the Milky Way, we're traveling a hell of a lot faster than that. But literally right now in our own, using our sun as a reference, we are traveling 70,000 miles an hour through space right now. And it feels like we are standing still. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a miracle. I would just like to say how wonderful it is to be on this planet living right now. And if we had to get through a pandemic, to understand how lucky we are to be connected, to be together, to be human, to be alive in the greatest moment in the history of mankind, with the longest lifespan, even with the pandemic. Basically, if you look at how much time and effort it took to work to make 1 hour of light so you could read a book in the 14 and 1500s, it would be half a day's labor to buy a candle. Do you know how much it costs the modern human being in work time to get an hour of artificial light to read? It's basically free. It's like 5 seconds of work on average in human culture right now to get an hour to read. So whether it's disease, whether it's our ability to have important medical devices that help us live longer, it's amazing. It really is. And if you think about, our ignorant and enslaved ancestors still being able once in a while to have a drink 10,000 years ago, to be able to make some wine and to drink it, let's have a big drink and let's talk a little bit about these old people 10,000 years ago and why they were drinking rosé. May the fourth be with you. May the fourth be with you. And may the fourth be with you. Before I launch into my speech about why the first wine made on purpose was rosé, I'm going to tell you my Star Wars story. So when I was 9 years old, I was up in Burlingame, California, which is just south of San Francisco, south of South San Francisco, where my uncle and my aunt lived. And we used to go up there in the summer, spend some time in the Bay Area. And we were there in 1977. So I would have been barely 8 years old, born in 1969. And my dad said, do you guys want to go wait in line for a couple hours and go see Star Wars? And I had really no idea, except I heard that it was the most popular movie of all time, that people were lining up around the block just to get in and see this film. So we went for an 8 o'clock show. We went about 4 in the afternoon. We waited in line for 4 hours. Somehow I don't even remember the time I waited in line. I don't remember. By the way, there was no such thing as cosplay back then. There was no one dressed up with lightsabers or with Darth Vader helmets or dark helmet or barf or any, there was no cosplay whatsoever. So it was just a bunch of, geeks hid in closets back then. Because if you're a geek, you get your butt kicked. Now, unlike today where you can be in choral music in high school, you can be a cosplayer or a geek, and there is some kind of coolness to it. This was like 7 years before, 15 years before I ever went to Comic-Con down in San Diego. The first time I went to Comic-Con, which was 1988, I walked in, bought a ticket. The second day, like nobody in line, met Raymond Feist, who was one of my favorite writers of science fiction. Boom. Anyway, so we got in. I saw Star Wars, and my life changed a lot. In fact, I think my dad's an amazing dude. If you don't know Don Hagen, you should. He was a lot of your principal. He was my principal at my high school. I'm walking out of high school for my first 2 years there, 84 and 85. Fortunately, 86, 87, we had a new high school principal, so I could reinvent myself before I went to college, which was nice. But my dad recognized coming out of that Star Wars movie, something had fundamentally changed in me. And I remember him putting his hand on my shoulder and said, "What do you think?" And I looked up at him and I said something that I'll never forget. I said, Dad, this is going to sound kind of weird. I don't want to go to church anymore because now I believe in the Force. And instead of like doing what most dads would be like, your grandfather's a minister, shut the hell up. We're going to church on Sunday, kid. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, the Force, it like binds us all together. It seems like it's such a beautiful idea and a concept. I had no idea about Buddhism or Taoism, or I had no idea that George Lucas had spent a lot of time reading Joseph Campbell and understanding comparative mythology and understanding the hero with 1,000 faces and creative mythology and the masks of God and the Atlas of World Mythology, and really understood that this. So what I had been shown is I had been sat in a church pew for most of my life and never felt connected to the songs, to the people, to the concepts, and to the idea. And all of a sudden there was a new spirituality given to me. And it sounds really stupid to say some kid's going to give up his religion and threaten himself with the fires of hell to believe in what a science fiction movie said. But I really meant it. And to be honest, my parents let me follow through. I actually didn't really spend a lot more time in church, and I didn't actually become, a devotee of the Force. But what I did become a devotee is the study of comparative mythology, the study, followed George Lucas's path and read Joseph Campbell, read Campbell's source material, James Gordon Fraser's Golden Bough, and found that comparative mythology and understanding that all religions basically follow the aims of a society. So if the aims of a society are personal property, then you're going to make 10 commandments that are very focused on what it means to come out of the Garden of Eden, have personal property, and on we go. I don't know how we got there from rosé, but that's what day drinking's all about. You never know what's going to happen with day drinking. So stoked you guys are all joining. We're drinking a 2019 J. Wilkes Grenache of rosé from Paso Robles Highlands District in the French Camp Vineyard. It has a temporary label because the labels are taking a little bit longer to print. No surprise, even though wine has been discovered and decided in California is an essential business. Printing the labels and all the other stuff, it is, but they also have to be very careful in the way they're printed. So we're finding turnover times for a lot of the things we're used to happening really fast in the wine industry is actually happening a little bit faster or a little bit slower. So as long as you guys will be patient, this beautiful rosé of Grenache will be ready for you guys. My guess is in about 6 weeks. The nice thing about it, it's already been bottled for a month, so it's out of quality control. We hold everything at the Miller Family Wine Company for a month, and then we taste it, and as long as it tastes great and we all agree it's ready for release, we will definitely release it. So let's get into it. What do we smell? I always love the bright kind of somewhere between watermelon now and laters, and most people would be like, what the hell is a now and later? Think of it as maybe more as a Jolly Rancher with the slightest little lactic character that might remind you of just like the sourness of really beautiful fruit yogurt without the yogurtiness, but there's that slight hint of lactic sourness. And this is 0% malolactic. So it's 100% malic acid. It's very, very bright, but there's always that little kind of like complexity because you didn't take this fruit so ripe. It's only 13% alcohol, or maybe even like 12.9. And as a result, it's a session beverage. So you can drink this, have a glass, and then have another glass, and then, maybe have another glass, whatever you really want to do. I mean, when you're day drinking, it depends on what your responsibilities are and what you got to get done. But in the end, we're kind of having a little bit of fun out here. We're fighting back against entropy, against disease, against contagion by being positive, loving our neighbors, loving the people that we're with, showing compassion and care for the people in our lives and the people in our social circles, both familial, work-related, and community-based. So as long as we're having fun and we're being somewhat kind to our liver and we're being somewhat kind to the people that we're living with, I strongly believe that having a beverage, maybe even a beverage during the day, but certainly a beverage at night, is a great way of bringing us all together and making us feel that we're connected. So when we walk in our neighborhood, I don't know if your neighborhood's the same as mine, but anytime I'm walking in my neighborhood, every single person who drives by, it's all about a wave. It's all about looking in the eyes. Now, I do walk with someone in a wheelchair, and when my wife and I go out, I have to be extra careful because she is in a wheelchair and she's more, you have to be careful that she doesn't, that people are paying attention. It's hard to see sometimes. I do wear a mask when I go out, and unfortunately, it fogs up my glasses, and I've been told as a result that I'm not using the mask right. If it's fogging the glasses, that might be an issue. But anyways, we're drinking rosé. So 2019 rosé, Paso Robles Highlands District, French Camp Vineyard, little tiny bit of Syrah. It's a proprietary blend, but we'll probably we're not very good at proprietary, so we'll probably put the percentages right on the back label, and if not, I'll tell you what they are anyways. The most important thing until you drink this wine is to know it's bright, it's elegant, it's got excellent structure, it's got plenty of acidity and mouth-watering structure to work with sushi, to work with oysters. I would say acid-wise and the way this drinks, it's not all that much different than an aromatic white wine. Now, when we were talking a little bit about the production of rosé, I thought this would be a really cool segue into production of rosé and why my belief is that the first wine that human beings ever made on purpose was a rosé. Why? Okay, well, first of all, back in the Paleolithic, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea about 10,000 years ago, when we had the domestication event of Vitis vinifera sylvestris into Vitis vinifera vinifera. So from a two-sexed vine, where one vine was male, one vine was female, and if the wind and or the insects worked perfectly, we got pollination and we got grapes. Unfortunately, sorry, plants, but sexual reproduction in plants is one of the most ineffective ways to get grapes you can ever imagine. Believe it or not, asexual or dioecious or perfected pollination is much better. So we had a male vine and a female vine, and then we had a domestication event when we found a genetic mutation of a vine that had both male and female parts on every single grape and berry. So we ended up having a hermaphrodite, dioecious, perfected vine that basically was a genetic mutation. Basically, solar radiation, cosmic rays hit a vine, broke down. The DNA just so happened on the part of the genome that controlled reproduction, and one out of a billion chance, one vine started producing clusters where every berry had not only the female ovary, the uva, the grape, but also 5 male parts surrounding it ready to pollinate it. So it didn't have to get pollen from 2 trees over. It got pollen literally within 2 centimeters of its actual, the stickiness on the ovary. So you ended up with going from about a 3 to 5% pollination rate to about a 95 to 100% pollination rate, which was huge. That vine was domesticated. Was that vine white or red? Do we know? Hell yes, we know. It was red. Wait, dude, come on. You can't tell me that 10,000 years ago, human beings domesticated a vine that was red and not white. Of course I can say that, because white grapes don't exist in nature. They are a genetic mutation that is completely and totally useless for the vine. Why? Because the red color is a visual indicator to the predator, to the hungry bird, to the hungry squirrel, to the skunk, to the possum. Hey, I'm ripe. If a grape is red, it is ripe. If a grape is red, the seed is viable to be spread through the gut of the animal into the environment to start a new grapevine. Why are grapes delicious? Why is there sugar in fruit? To entice animals to eat the fruit and spread the seed dispersal. Why? It's really, really important to understand that fact. So all fruit is sweet for one reason, to get those seeds into the gut of an animal. And that's one reason too, is that hard coat on any seed is not only bitter, but also that hard coat is hard because it can actually survive the intestinal tract of most animals and come out the other end in a little pile of fertilizer and start a brand new grapevine. Rosé. So you're suggesting that rosé was the first wine? Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and say that a sort of Nouveau rosé was probably the first wine that human beings ever drank on purpose. So somewhere between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. So somewhere between Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, the uplands of Anatolia and Turkey, and Iran, there was a moment where grapes were brought into a village and those grapes were juiced. I strongly believe that the first wines that were made were not actually made with skins in contact. What would make sense would be to remove the juice after they had seen that maybe someone wanted to drink some juice of a grape and they put it in a vessel or in a stone basin or something. Or theoretically, we could have even put grapes in a basin and slowly the skins broke down and the grapes began to spontaneously ferment. The smell was interesting. Maybe someone dipped their hand in and took the Paleolithic Eucharist. They felt their human consciousness elevate from the mundane to the heavenly and recognized that they had just invented intoxication and religion. The idea that we could feel better, that there's a better place to go, that heaven is the place where we're drunk all day and we never feel the effects. Maybe that was important to the development of spirituality. Spiritus, the word spiritus means breath. If you've ever seen a fermentation, it breathes. These are, obviously I'm an alcohol professional. I do everything I can to justify my drinking by virtue of history in these stories. But I think it's pretty interesting that fermentation breathes, humans breathe, spiritus, spirituality, this whole idea of fermentation, this whole idea of intoxication, this idea that the human mind can go other places, not only by imagination, not only by the idea of religion, imagining ourselves in a religious world, but the actual ritual. Why do we drink wine to celebrate Christianity? Why is wine the official beverage of Christianity? Because the ritual, what is ritual? Ritual is taking mythology and making it concrete. So if we say we are going to consume the blood of Christ and the blood of Christ actually intoxicates us, that gives us an indication that our consciousness can be elevated. And that elevation is a symbol of what religion can do. Now, you can argue as a secular humanist that intoxication is an ends to itself, that we can become intoxicated, feel as wonderful as we can, but there's also that round trip that we have to understand, that as high as we get, our bodies might actually go through some pain and suffering to justify that. But why rosé and why the Paleolithic? Here's my idea. The best we can suggest is there in the oldest wineries that we can find in Tbilisi, Georgia, in Areni, Armenia, which is in the shadow of Mount Ararat, where Noah was supposed to have landed after the flood. Who did God save? To say something nice about God, he saved a viticulturist and a winemaker. And Noah was a hell of a viticulturist and a winemaker, because when he landed on Mount Ararat, he planted a vineyard and then got drunk that night. Now, it doesn't say he had wine in the boat. After 40 days and 40 nights, we can assume he probably went through what he had. But if you can plant a vineyard and get drunk that night, I'm just saying, you got a good deal going on with man upstairs. That's pretty impressive. But the idea of Paleolithic wine must have been what we see in the caves at Areni 1. And in the caves at Areni 1, I wish I could actually throw up a picture. I don't think I can. If you were there on Friday, you saw it, were these treading basins that were basically carved out of the stone in the cave that had sort of a little ramp coming off of it, and then all the juice off of the treading platform would go down into an underground clay-lined basin. And that basin was temperature-controlled fermentation vat. Because it was underground, it would, even if it was 110 degrees outside in Armenia, you walk into that cave, walk through basically a couple curves in the cave, it's 58 degrees. And then you go down another 2 or 3 feet, you got 55 to 57 degrees, 365 days a year. You could ferment, you can age, and you can hold the wine in there until it's pulled out for consumption. So what would this look like? Well, if you've ever made wine, so there's no press. So if there's no press, they've got to stomp the grapes. And we know, looking at these vessels, they're perfect size for 2 people to be holding onto each other's hands and holding on and stomp, 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 stomp. And the longer you stomp, the more you're breaking the skins, the more you're breaking the red skins. Remember, it had to be red grapes. There were no white grapes until probably Muscat of Alexandria, which might have been the first white grape in history. We're not sure. It could have been Gouais Blanc. It could have been Claret. We just don't know. Probably not Claret. But what we end up having is foot stomped juice going into these basins. And once it's in that basin, where do we get the yeast? Where do we get the chemicals? Don't we have to stir it and make wine? No, just stomp the grapes, get the juice going. Any grape grown anywhere in the world, substance called bloom on it. It's that waxy substance on the grape that looks kind of frosty. And if you touch the grape, like in a supermarket, it gets kind of shiny, kind of that matte waxiness to shininess. That matte waxiness has 2 purposes. One is to protect the grapes against sunburn. So it's SPF. It protects the grapes against sunburn to a large extent. And it also has a positive ionic charge to attract yeast. Coevolutionarily, grapes attract yeast. So there you go, religious people. Proof that your God wants us to drink. If he didn't, why would he have created grapes to attract the same yeast that turned the grapes into alcohol? And for that matter, why would he have made alcoholic wine the official beverage of Western civilization? We like to think as we crush those grapes, we would have got a nice pink juice into these fermentation vessels that would have been normally underground. And then here we go. All of a sudden, those yeast are going to jump in, and we're going to use the greatest industrial microbe in the history of mankind, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. One microbe makes all alcohol in the world. One microbe makes all the bread in the world. If you don't like bread and you don't like alcohol, you're probably an alcoholic diabetic, or basically celiac. So, but two of the greatest gifts given to us by nature, but given to us by the genius of human invention, the genius of human discernment, are alcohol and bread, both of which come from one of the oldest industrial microbes on the planet, and that's Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So aren't we lucky? Isn't that fabulous that we have all of that wonderful stuff? Yes. I love some folks here on Instagram are saying, I'm not religious, but amen. Hey, I have broken the cycle in my family of being a preacher. Ministers go back in my family all the way back to Scotland and the Presbyterian Church. And I've had a number of my ancestors were Presbyterian ministers, and those were basically teetotaling non-drinkers. So I am coming back with a passion. My great-grandfather and my grandfather might be a little disappointed that I'm doing a show on day drinking, considering they never touched this stuff. But you know what? I'm just doing probably, I could argue with them that 4 times within the New Testament that Jesus is called a bibber. And a bibber is not just someone who drinks. A bibber is someone who thoroughly enjoys the consumption of alcohol. And anyone who would not put up with the wedding of Canaan without the inclusion of alcohol, and anyone who would say that the blood of the vine was also the blood of Christ, obviously that's important. I look at this as wonderful stories about how spirituality is connected with the drinking of wine and the way we feel when we drink wine. Yes. Thank you, Jim. I'm definitely a preacher. Praise be to Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Praise be to the yeast that gives us all the love. All right. We've got 5:30. We're finishing up some rosé. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that those original wines that were foot stomped, you had pink juice and you had basically Paleolithic Nouveau Rosé, because those wines would have been consumed at the end of fermentation. And basically, as soon as those wines were approaching dry, people would have been drinking them. It would have been a seasonal beverage. There wouldn't have been much to keep the wines happy and healthy and clean in them. So chances are in the Northern Hemisphere, in Azerbaijan, in Georgia, and in that area, they would have been drinking wine probably, I would say seasonally, probably from mid-September to probably late October. And then wine was forgotten about. And the difference was you can make beer all year long with grain that has been dried, but you can't make wine all year long by fully dried out raisins. So my guess is one reason why wine was so precious is it was only available as during season, which was basically in the fall, moving into. And you could also argue, if you look back at Fraser and Joseph Campbell, you look back at all of the different sort of spiritual expressions of mythology and ritual during harvest and during the periods of harvest in Europe. There's so many amazing stories and rituals in Germany and France and all over Western Europe about what they would do at the end of harvest. Some of them certainly could have been influenced by the idea that you are harvesting these grains, these grapes, these fruits, making these products, and representing the energy that came out of the earth to represent them. And then, of course, trying to do everything you can. Awesome. Cool. I see Blake and Drew's in the house. Report's still in the house. We got Kevin Jones, Liquid Asset Sellers. What's up, LA? Oh, man, shouldn't they just give the Lakers a ring at this point? Come on. Are they going to really they can really cancel the Lakers season. Kevin is one of my potential hookups for Staples Center tickets. So when this is over and we can go see the boys play again at the Staples Center, let's go see them. I'd like to see that. He also gives me Clippers tickets, but I only took someone there as a Clippers fan. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed it. This was pre-Kawhi. But seriously, it's all about the Lakers as far as I'm concerned. So this is bright and crisp. I just looked at the lab work. It's about 2 grams of residual sugar. So that is 0.2% residual sugar. Most women pick up residual sugar if they have a very, very good palate at about 3 grams, 0.3% by volume. And most men pick up residual sugar by 0.4 or 0.5 or 0.5% residual sugar. Women having the ability to smell better, both literally and figuratively. Rosé to me should be dry, although a little bit of off dryness is pretty interesting to me. I want to talk about residual sugar, and I had a shower thought. I was literally in the shower when I came up this for you. So don't say I never do anything for you naked, because I do. And I did this all for you guys during my shower, and now I'm getting a little red in the face. I had a problem with gin and tonics, a fairly serious problem with gin and tonics. Not that I was drinking too many, but I thought by virtue of the flavor of Schweppes regular original tonic with quinine, that it was dry. Tonic water doesn't have a lot of sugar in it, right? It's not sweet, right? Okay, well, turns out quinine that they put in this stuff is incredibly bitter. Really, really effing bitter. I kept having gin and tonics every night because I thought it would be a great way as a type 1 diabetic, insulin dependent, that I wouldn't spike my blood sugar. So I could have about 100 blood sugar. I could have a gin and tonic. It might go up to 110, 115. I didn't even think, because I just assumed it was that it didn't have a lot of high fructose corn syrup. This blew my freaking mind. I was having a lot of problems last week after my show. My blood sugar would go through the roof. And I'm like, am I stressed about the show? Is this something? Because stress can have very interesting impacts on my glucose level. So finally, last night, I went to pour myself a gin and my wife and I have had a nightly gin and tonic for a couple of weeks. And by the way, week 5 on day drinking. Woo! Thank you guys for being with me. This is awesome. I'm so stoked. We're all the way into over 25 shows. This is just incredible. Turns out because anything and everything I put in my body, I check total carbs. Total carbs on 6 ounces of Schweppes tonic is 34 grams of carbs. I was stunned. That's Coca-Cola levels of sugar. How in the world can tonic water have the same level of high fructose corn syrup as Coca-Cola? It was spiking me like 100 points per drink, which is quite significant. And I finally figured it out. And I had this aha moment, my little Archimedes aha moment, right? Eureka. When I figured out I was drinking massive amounts of high fructose corn syrup, completely by surprise and completely by accident. And this is what got me to thinking about residual sugar. That residual sugar in wine is a lot like residual sugar in tonic water, that you need a little residual sugar. And that's why some German Rieslings have to have residual sugar, because the acid level is searing. And if the acid level is like 3.0 or 2.9 pH with 9 or 10 grams of acid, some Spatlesies, some Beerenauslesies, you're talking about a level of sugar that actually balances the acid in your mouth so it doesn't completely burn it. I mean, you still have the pH, you still have the level of acid in the wine, but the bitterness of the acidity and the acid in the mouth balances the sugar in the mouth. So I like to say Yeah, it's really quite sweet. This dessert wine is quite sweet, but it's got the acid to pay the bills, meaning it balances. The ledger becomes straight. So I thought that would be a really cool way for me to explain residual sugar in rosé or residual sugar in Riesling, that sometimes it's perfectly balanced at 4, 5, 6, 7, 12, 20 grams of acid. I've made a dessert wine almost 60 grams of residual sugar, 6% of residual sugar. So you're talking about 60 grams. That's a lot of sugar in your mouth. You better have enough acidity to blend it together. It'll just taste sweet and fall off and have nothing. So I love how a great wine, great dessert wine can be balanced between its bitterness or its acidity and the way it hits our acid and our bitterness receptors, and its sweetness to bring balance to the palate. And the fact that if you're watching your glucose, if you're watching your carbs, gin and tonics are off the menu. So now I'm doing gin and ice, which is actually a much better drink, as long as it's good gin. Just putting a little bit of fresh lemon juice from our lemon tree outside. And I'll tell you what, having a lemon tree in your backyard in this situation, so much nicer than having to get onto Instacart and just for cocktails, ordering a couple limes and lemons. Absolutely important to do that. So that's pretty much what I had for you tonight. We got about, we were about 40, 45 minutes, almost an hour into the show from the very beginning. Folks on Instagram, you should know, over on the Facebook Live side, we start a little early, get some questions, get some stuff running, get a couple drinks in us. So if you're ever interested in coming over to Facebook, you can always check it out. But I love the fact we're getting a really nice viewership on Instagram. Yes, the Zika virus is that sleeping virus, right? Is that the sleeping sickness, as well as, right, it's anti-malarial. So malaria and Zika, or no, Zika is the head shrinking virus, right? Yeah, Finger Lakes Riesling is Jim, is a fantastic example of a wine that has searing acidity and a really nice sugar to balance it. So again, if the acid is too high, you need a little residual sugar. And if the residual sugar is too high, you need some acid. It is a balancing game. And rosé is a good way to do that. I prefer incredibly low amounts of sugar in my rosé. I tend to like high acid, bright rosé. All right, so New World Gin or Old World Gin. Dead Lioness, I will tell you that my favorite gin is actually Leatherby from Chicago, and it is their it's their autumnal gin. The autumnal Leatherby is my favorite. My favorite sort of daily drinking gin would be a London dry gin named Beefeater. You probably heard of it. And then what I've been drinking recently is Sapphire, Bombay Sapphire, which I find to be an amazingly good gin for the money. I've been getting handles for about 25, 28 bucks, and they've been obviously great. Andrew Latham asked the question, is there skin contact time on the Grenache? Believe it or not, like 5 hours. Grenache from Paso Robles does not color up quite nice. In fact, we could have probably macerated it for a week and ended up with a wine that would still look like rosé, but it would hit the palate with some bitterness and some extra skin tannin. So we did a couple hours of skin contact, let it be, and then gave a little tiny bit of Syrah for a little extra color to get a little beyond that salmon skin color and a little to that nice sort of light pink color that I just think is just de rigueur for a beautiful rosé. So you can kind of see nice, beautiful pink color. So almost, and so I guess I'm drinking Old World Gin. Power of Myth and Residual Sugar. Yes. Probably saw the mythic dimension right in back of me. Blake, welcome. Drew Hansen, love to have you here. Champagne, please. You know the quote from Lily Bollinger, I don't touch the stuff unless I'm thirsty. I'm so glad, Dead Lioness, that you're a Joseph Campbell fan. He gave me my spirituality back until I read Baruch Spinoza. If you haven't read Spinoza, you should read Spinoza and Joseph Campbell while you're still in sparkling isolation. It'd be good for you. And Phil Carpenter, love you, baby. Thank you so much for those beers. Did I tell you Phil Carpenter from the Vintners Association? Don Schroeder, who's the winemaker for Sea Smoke, gave Phil some Alvarado Street beers, which are like my favorite right now. I think it's probably the best brewery in the United States. Certainly, I think making the best beers on the West Coast. Phil Carpenter, who was bored building the Santa Barbara County Vintners website, you're doing a good job, but I know you need a little time off. So when you come back to it, you even do a better job. He got into his car with 2 beers, drove all the way up to Orchid, 35 minutes, dropped off my 2 beers and drove home. He went home with some damn beer, let me tell you, and some mead and some other delicious stuff. But Phil, you're my hero. I have yet to jump into those beers, but I like to drink them fresh. So maybe I'll open one each night, Tuesday and Wednesday. Cool thing too, I just got confirmation. This Friday, we're doing another Zoom tasting with a guest, and our guest on this Friday is going to be insane. 5 to 6 Zoom call with Jason Osborne, the most brilliant, one of 2 of the most brilliant beer minds I've ever met. Also happen to know Tim Vandergrift, who's also a beer genius, but we're talking Master Cicerone level of understanding of beer production, and the history of beer. And we're going to be talking all about beer on Friday from 5 to 6. I might have some wine in my glass. I might not. I think we're just going to drink some beer and hang out and talk about where beer came from, how the craft beer movement in the United States started, where the craft beer industry is headed, and a little bit about making beer and selling beer in the COVID-19 sort of environment. So if you love beer, if you know anyone who loves beer, make sure to come in on Friday and to check that out. I think it's going to be really, really special. And Anne, thank you so much for being here. And Cole Schisler, I know that dude. Hope everything is well with you down in Orange County. Let's go grab some sushi. Need my soda. You've never been to Soda in Corona Del Mar? You can't. They probably are doing some takeout stuff, but they do an omakase. It's like a $95 lunch and $135 dinner that will blow your effing mind. It was so good after I did the Fatty 5, bellies from 5 different fish, sea bream, sea trout, I think freshwater salmon, yellowtail, ahi, and maguro, like real blue, like the fatty belly of like 5 different fish. Amazing. Can't wait to get back to Soda down in Corona Del Mar. PB Song, baby, is that Pacific Beach? Because I used to live down there in Pacific Beach, and I'll tell you, back in the late 80s, it was about the coolest place you could ever be. RKO Vine, thank you so much for being here. And DC, Dead Linus, love the DC. I'll see you at the DC Smokehouse sometime soon. If not that, Rose's Luxury, because I need to get my DC on. Who knows when, but DC is one of my favorite markets, and we do a lot of really good work there. So very, very excited about that. Keith Jackson about beer on Friday. I like that. And I'm just trying to get, let's see, that goes larger. Perfect. Bob can only get audio today. That's too bad. That's weird. Yeah, no, and Jennifer Mackey was talking about why don't I go with gin and soda, just soda water. You're absolutely right. That's exactly where I need to go. That corn syrup is just killing me. Yeah, so Dominic was talking about different ways of making rosé. So I would say that there's a couple ways. One is you just take red grapes straight from the field, put them in a press, and press off the juice, direct to press. And you're going to get a little bit of color, a little bit of juice if you're using Nebbiolo or Pinot Noir like at Clos Pepe. If you ever saw those Clos Pepe rosés, and hey, that was from my homies. If you've ever seen the Clos Pepe rosé, it's almost exactly this color with 0 skin contact. This is Paso Grenache with a couple hours of skin contact that had about the same color as no skin contact Clos Pepe Pinot Noir. Does that mean Clos Pepe Pinot Noir has more color than Grenache from Paso Robles? Yes, it does. There are color compounds from cool climate that don't exist in warm climate, and Grenache takes on its highest color in cool climate viticultural production, region 2 and even region 1. So you can go direct to press. Just put some grapes without even destemming them, just throw the grapes in the press, inflate the press, push the grapes against the perforated stainless sort of cylinder. The juice falls into the pan. You pump the juice into a tank or a barrel, and you ferment the juice straight out of it. Now, the next way you do it would be to completely destem the grapes. So run it through a crusher destemmer. Stems go out one side, the grapes fall into a fermenter, and then you basically either use a stainless steel sort of foot and punch the crap out of it to try to break as many skins and get some skin contact, or you put on some food grade plastic boots, sterilize them with some alcohol, get in there with waders or boots and foot stomp it and stomp it and stomp it and stomp it and stomp it. And literally you can stomp the red grapes until you get the color you want. If you want light pink, stomp it till it's light pink. If you want medium pink, stomp it till it's light pink. If you want it not stop, I had an intern back in 2002, 2003, who basically saw 9/11 in Manhattan and decided that he never wanted to be in New York again. He flew out and became my intern. He just wanted to work at a winery, but he was also training for marathons. And so he never before I'd had someone who could foot stomp fruit like that. He could get into a bin and spend 3.5 to 4 hours foot stomping. So if you wanted him to do that, 3.5 hours of foot stomping, you would end up with a wine that would almost look like electric purple, like just almost the color of red wine. So it's all about how much skin contact, how much foot stomping, how much mechanical manipulation and mechanical punch downs you're going to do, how much you want to beat up that fruit, because the more you beat it up, the more color you're going to get. So it's all about, you can make the wine just like a white wine and end up with color similar to this in a dark skin varietal, or you can go to a more macerated. If you've seen a rosé of Syrah that might have a day or two of skin contact, it almost has a color unlike Syrah. It's just so electric, kind of electric pink, just almost more pink than you would expect out of a rosé. Let's see, is there any other production methods for rosé? I suppose you could make one with carbonic maceration. You could allow the fermentation to start in a pressurized stainless tank, let the stainless tank explode the fruit, start the fermentation, and then evacuate the tank, open the pressure, and then take the partially carbonic macerated grapes and press off to make some type of slight carbonic rosé. I just made that up. So someone try it and pay me. Cool. A lot of talking, not a lot of drinking. If you want to tell me where you are and what you're drinking, I always like to know. And I don't judge. PBR, Lucky Lager, all the way to Domaine de la Romanée-Conti. I could care less. Drinking is fun. Drinking is a prism. Drinking exacerbates who we really are. If you tell me that you're a really nice person, but you can be kind of a jerk when you're drinking, I'm calling BS. You're just kind of a jerk and you hide it well when you're sober. Alcohol makes us more of who we actually are. It strips away the affectation. It strips away the pretense and takes us to where we want to be. What I find is my best friends, the people I feel strongest about, I find when they come over, I've never had to ask them to leave because they were intoxicated enough that they made a fool of themselves. So being able to maintain an Athenian level of intoxication, where at the end of a night, you can still stand up, you can still speak without any type of problems with slurring. You theoretically, if you can't drive, you're smart enough to let someone else drive who's a little bit more sober than you. I strongly believe two things. One is that alcohol is our friend, and B, that alcohol is our enemy. And it's up to you what it is, right? I mean, we can use alcohol as a tool to come together, to feel good, to be celebratory, to feel performative, to feel relaxed. And other people use alcohol and end up doing horrible things to other people. So I will say it is a huge responsibility. With great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility. So if we have the power to give ourselves happiness and intoxication, we also have a great responsibility to understand that with every drink we take, we're also theoretically putting some child's life in danger if we were to get in a car and go out onto the street and drive. So as much as I suggest that human beings were either created or evolved to use alcohol, small amounts of alcohol, a drink or two on a regular daily basis to help us feel better, to help us be healthier, to help us relax. I also feel if you're going to take that perspective, you also have to recognize just how much responsibility we have as drinkers to make sure that our drinking and our decision to drink never has a negative consequence on the people around us. And in that way, it's also incredibly important, in my perspective, when the fourth is with us, is that we're taking extra special care of the people in our community, the people in our family, and obviously, the people that we communicate with in the social media sphere. So make sure to thank a doctor, to make sure to thank a PA, to thank a nurse, to thank someone who's basically running X-rays. The person who delivered my burrito last night, you're my freaking hero. Thank you. I was really hungry and I needed something really interesting and meaty just to make me feel better. So again, I'll leave you tonight with saying, I hope you enjoyed a little conversation about rosé. I hope you understand that probably the first wine that we ever drank as human beings on purpose was likely a Paleolithic rosé, probably from a very interesting grape that looked a lot like Kurgenic Castellansky, otherwise known as Zinfandel. Probably that original cluster was probably large and purple. Remember that red grapes are the only grapes that exist in nature. White grapes are basically a genetic mutation that would have basically been left in nature. It probably would not have created many more white grapevines because birds generally ignore white grapes and they'll pick up red grapes and love them with all their heart. So all of these things point to one obvious solution, and that is to get together, to care for each other, to be humanists, to care about our community, to care about the welfare and flourishing of humankind. And I would just suggest just to take a moment, deep breath in, deep breath out, and know we're all in this together. And I'm really hoping that when we're done, we'll get together and maybe watch episode 4, maybe go to Vegas for a drink, maybe have a couple shots of tequila and giggle and remember what it means to not worrying about shaking hands and giving a hug and being together in person. So I look forward to sitting with you at a sushi bar, at a raw oyster bar, at a great restaurant in San Francisco, at a great restaurant in Vegas, at a great restaurant in New Orleans, and a great restaurant in Manhattan. I just can't wait to get back out. So take care of each other, be smart, trust doctors, trust science, and we'll get out on the other side of this. And just remember to be really, really careful because it's not just me that cares about you, it's the world that cares about you, and you have the capacity to make this world a better place. So let's get out there and do it. And tomorrow, what the hell are we doing tomorrow? Tomorrow we're doing Chardonnay. So we're doing 3 Chardonnays and compare and contrast. So 3 Chardonnays, 3 different styles. Screw it. Let's go 4 Chardonnays. I'll open one of my Clos Pepe homage to Chablis. I made the first stainless steel Chardonnay in Santa Barbara County. If anyone made one before 2000, let me know, but I don't think they did. I made 15 vintages of stainless steel Chardonnay at Clos Pepe. I don't have much of it left because I drank it all because it's so freaking delicious. I will open an homage to Chablis Chardonnay from Clos Pepe tomorrow. And really also exciting, and then on Friday, we've got Jason Osborne. We're going to be talking about the history of beer. We're going to talk about how beer saved the world. It's going to be bitching. I'm going to have so many cool pictures and little videos. You guys are going to be all in. And then a week from tomorrow, I have a very special co-host. Week from tomorrow, we're staying on schedule, and we're going to be doing the J. Wilkes 2013 Chanda's Reserve Chardonnay, which was a wine named after and to celebrate my wife Chanda. And if any of you were on the Zoom talk where we talked about dog training, so we will do a combination of Chanda's Chardonnay 2013 J. Wilkes Chanda's Reserve, and we will be answering dog training questions because she is an amazing dog trainer and she's been training service dogs now for 15 years. Awesome. Really, really hope that you guys had a fantastic time. I am going to just search. Oh, I know. Jim was drinking some old Clos Pepe. Walter K. Beeson is in the house. my ex-roommate, well, he was an across the street neighbor from Laguna Hills, California, and we played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons that summer. So, Walt, it's good to see you, my friend. Do miss you. And Todd Harrington's in the house over here. Jim, Tempranillo Rosé, Paonia, Colorado. Wow. I like Colorado. You know, Colorado's kind of stepping up, and Kevin Beauchamp's in the house. And Jim Eshelman's also very wise to love Finger Lake Riesling, which is some of my favorite wine in the United States, bar none. Between Ithaca and Geneva, there's a lot of amazing wines out there. Syrah Rosé from Beckman, yum. Rick Cronkite, dude, damn you for introducing me to Fernet Branca. I've got 2 coins, a shirt, and a hat. So basically the guy that basically got me into one of my greatest alcohol sort of addictions in my life. You are the reason, Rick Cronkite, that if I went to a desert island, the only alcohol I would bring is Fernet Branca. Because champagne sucks when it's warm. Fernet Branca, I can drink it any temperature. Unbelievable. Good to have you here, Rick. And Eddie Gray, love to have you in the house. Jesse Rhodes in the house. Saving Ghana one well at a time, my friend. Sans Liege Grenache Rosé, 2018. Don Ward, go Sans Liege. One of my good golfing buddies is the assistant winemaker up there. Nate Smith is in the house. Good to have you there, brother. Hey, my dad's in the house. How do you feel seeing your son day drinking? You'll always be supported to follow your dreams and desires. That's what makes you so special and lovable. Right, Chanda? And this is the man who I told that I'm not going to church anymore right after I went and saw Star Wars with him in Burlingame in 1977. Thank you, Dad, for being so damn cool. All right. Randy and Kristen and everybody else. The grapes. Michelle Shin asked about the rosé and wondered if the little amount of Syrah in here was co-fermented. It was not. It was actually added as small amounts of still red wine to the Grenache because the Grenache had almost no color. So there you go. All right. Got the rosé, diatonic. Yeah, I don't really do diet anything. I have a strong belief that any artificial sweetener is going to do awful things to my ability to taste residual sugar. And growing up with a juvenile diabetic, for many, many years before I became diabetic, I have a great hatred of flavor of all artificial sweeteners. Yes. Mayor Rogers, we will do an El Paso home wine dinner this summer. That sounds fantastic. Well, thank you, Michelle. That's very sweet of you to say. Ooh, lemonade. I'm going to make some lemonade. Limoncello is what, when I have more than I know what to do with. It's a lot of very carefully cut off that pith. 2013, Jay Wilkes, Henrietta Hills. I don't know where you got that, Keith Jackson, but I'm stoked that it's drinking well today. And the 4th is certainly with me. And if I was Chewy, I would definitely. It kind of reminds me too here for some reason of UNLV, and I've got lots of things from UNLV. So this is yet another expression of my support of Las Vegas and the difficulties going through. I can imagine Marquette would make a beautiful rosé. And by the way, that Marquette is still drinkable under the. I tried it this morning, and I'm going to drink some more in just about. Tempranillo. Pinot Noir rosé. Yeah, Pinot Noir makes some amazing rosé. The problem is the expense. We make a rosé for 2 years at Club Pepe, and it cost us $30 a bottle to make the rosé, and we sold it for $18. Doesn't make a hell of a lot of difference. Michelle's having some barrel burner cab sauv. Awesome. And 19 Baja wine had a little bit, Josh said, of a little bit of a wet ash flavor, and he said that there was a fire. So yeah, I think anytime you get a little ashtray aroma in a wine, chances are there were probably a smoke taint, because that smoke taint is absolutely indicative of that. Awesome. Well, it looks like we got through everyone's questions for now. So if anyone has any other questions, just let me know. I do check in the morning. Tomorrow, Chardonnay, 4:45 on Facebook, 5 o'clock over there on the Instagram. So I hope you guys all had a good time tonight. I certainly did. Thank you for helping and justifying the day drinking of someone who is in sparkling isolation a little deeper than even most of you. Be smart, stay at home, listen to scientists, listen to doctors. I don't necessarily trust people that tell me what to do in a government building with an AR-15, although in the end, I still have a number of firearms from my original job as a farmer. They just don't really come out, and I make sure if I make a political statement, I make it with my brain and not a gun. Let's go from there. I don't think it's important to threaten to shoot fellow Americans to be healthy. That's as political as I'll get tonight. Perhaps I've had a little drink. Very important. Love each other. Don't shoot each other. You don't need a gun to make a point. Be smart. Listen to doctors. Listen to scientists. And let's get out through the other thing. Let's keep our grandparents alive. Let's keep our friends alive. Let's keep everything we know and love alive. Let's be smart. Let's be good to each other and make sure to show love to anyone and everyone that treats you well. Take good care, guys. Really, really amazing. So stoked that all of you were here. And thanks again to Phil Carpenter for those awesome beers. And I will be drinking some tomorrow. So have a great time, guys. If it can't be with the wine you love the wine you're with.